Hey guys, Miss Fearon here. We're going to go ahead and look at Unit 3 notes for today. So yesterday we looked at multiplying monomials. We're going to look at dividing monomials today. So we know yesterday we talked about when you multiply monomials, we add the powers. So when we divide monomials, we're going to go ahead and we're going to subtract their exponents. So basically, I'm looking at this example here, a to the 6 divided by a squared. That's like saying a to the 6 minus 2, which is going to give me a to the 4th. Another way you can look at this is a to the 6 means that I have 6 a's on top. I have a times a times a times a times a times a, all divided by 2 on the bottom. We know that if you have something on top that's the same on the bottom, we can cancel them out. So I'd only be left with these, which a times a times a times a is a to the 4th. So let's go ahead and look at some examples here. Example number 1, I have 4ab on the top divided by a. Well, I have an a on top and an a on bottom. So those are going to go ahead and those are going to cancel each other out. And I'm going to be left with 4b. Looking at number 2 here, I have 6xy to the 3rd divided by xy. Well, I have one x on top and one x on bottom. Those are going to cancel each other out. I have 3 y's on the top and only 1 on the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that, use our power where it's subtracting them. So 3 minus 1 is going to give me 2, so I'm going to get y squared. And the bigger number of those is on the top, so that y squared is going to stay on the top. I got to still have that 6 up on top as well then. So let's look at number 3 then. I have 5x squared y divided by 10x. So now with our coefficients, or the big numbers in front, we want to do the operation that's actually there. So this is telling us divide, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to divide the coefficients. So if I do 5 divided by 10, I get a decimal. So I'm not going to do that. I want fractions. So we're going to say, well, what number goes into 5 and 10 that we can take out? So we know that we're going to divide that by 5. So my top number is now going to become a 1, and my bottom number is now going to become a 2. So now we're going to deal with our x's. We have x squared on top and x on the bottom. Well, we know that we subtract, so this has an imaginary 1. 2 minus 1 is 1, and the bigger number of the x's was on top, so that 1x is going to stay on the top. And that y doesn't have anything for me to do, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to leave that on top as well. Number 4 here then, again, we're going to think we need to simplify the coefficients or the fraction in the front, because 4 divided by 14 does not give me a nice number. It's a decimal, and we want fractions. So I know that a 2 goes into both of those, so I'm going to divide by 2 and divide by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So now I'm going to deal with my variables. I have a to the 3rd divided by a to the 4th. So now we want to do the bigger number minus the smaller number, and it's going to go where the bigger number is. So my bigger number is down here at the bottom, the 4th. So I'm going to do 4 minus 3, which is 1, and the bigger number was on the bottom, so that a to the 1 is going to be on the bottom. So now I have b to the 5th divided by b squared. You can use that same idea. The bigger number minus the smaller number, so 5 minus 2 is 3, and it goes where the bigger number was. So the 5 was the bigger number, it was on top, so the b to the 3rd is going to go on the top. So now it's that question again of how do I know I'm done? Well, remember, here's what we need to see. Each base appears only once. So your x you only have showing up once, or your y you only have showing up once. There are no power of powers, so nothing that looks like this. We cannot have parentheses with powers on the outside. And then all fractions are reduced. So just like that 4 over 14 we just looked at, we had to take a 2 out of both of those. I need to make sure that those fractions are reduced as far as they can go. So let's look at a couple more examples here. Number 5. I have 5x to the 3rd, y to the 4th, divided by 15x squared y. So I'm going to deal with the coefficients first. So 5 and 15, if I do 5 divided by 15, I get a decimal. So I'm going to say, well, I need to reduce that. What number goes into 5 and 15? So I'm going to take a 5 out, so I'm going to divide by 5 and divide by 5. So I know that 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is going to give me 3. So my fraction is reduced. Now I'm going to deal with the variables. I have x to the third divided by x squared. So the bigger number of those is on the top, and it's 3. And I'm going to subtract the smaller number, which is 2. So 3 minus 2 is 1. And the bigger number, again, was on top, so that x to the 1 is going to stay on top. Y to the fourth divided by y. 4 minus 1 is 3, and the bigger number of them was on top, so this y to the third is going to stay on top. Number 6, I'm going to say, well, I have 27 divided by 54. Those don't divide nicely, but I know that 27 goes into both of them, so I'm going to divide by 27, divide by 27. So I'm going to get 1 over 2. And an x squared divided by an x squared, well, a 2 minus 2 is 0, and anything to the 0 power is 1, so those pretty much cancel out. So I'm just left with 1/2. So number 7, I want to simplify this top first before I'm going to go ahead and divide. So we want to always simplify anytime before we divide if we possibly can. So x times x to the third. Well, remember, this is like an x to the 1. And when we have x's and we multiply them, we add their power. So I'm actually ending up with x to the fourth divided by x to the fourth. So just like we were kind of talking about, 4 minus 4 is 0. So I actually get x to the 0. And anything to the 0 power is is 1. So now, this example number 8, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look inside the parentheses first, and we're going to say, can I simplify anything in there? So we're going to ignore the 4 on the outside of the parentheses, and we're going to simplify the inside if we can. In this problem, there is absolutely nothing I can simplify. So now we're going to do what we did yesterday. This 4 on the outside tells me I write what's in the parentheses 4 different times. So I have 2p squared all over 3 times 2p squared all over 3 times 2p squared all over 3 times 2p squared all over 3. So now we're ending up with a multiplication problem straight across for our fractions. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. P squared times p squared times p squared times p squared. Remember, when we multiply, we add. So 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So I get p to the 8th. And then I'm going to divide by 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And that's going to give me 81. If I could reduce, I would. But in this situation, there is no number that goes into 16 and 81. So that's my final answer. So let's look at number 9 here. 5x to the 5th y, all divided by 6x, all squared. So we want to look inside the parentheses first, and we want to simplify anything we can inside the parentheses. So I cannot simplify 5 divided by 6. That's the smallest it's going to go. So I'm going to have 5 divided by 6 still. Now I have x to the 5th divided by x. So it's an imaginary 1 down there, so I'm going to do 5 minus 1, which is 4. And it goes where the bigger number was. So the bigger number was on top, so I have x to the 4th on top. And then I'm still going to have that y. And that whole thing is still squared. So now that the inside of the parentheses is simplified, we can go ahead and we can deal with this squared on the outside, which tells me I'm going to write that parenthesis 2 different times. So I have 5x to the 4th y all over 6 times 5x to the 4th y all over 6. So now we're just going to multiply straight across. So 5 times 5 is going to give me 25. X to the 4th times x to the 4th. I need to add those, so I'm going to get x to the 8th. Y times y, well, I have 1 plus 1, so I get a y squared. All over 6 times 6, which is going to give me 36. Last problem here, I want you to go ahead and pause the video and try this one on your own, and then come back and check your answers. So I got a to the 12th, b to the 15th, all divided by 8. If you didn't get that, please come talk to me before moving on to your assignment for the day.